At the far end of a winding mountain road stands an imposing stone fortress perched atop a sheer cliff. Four friends arrive one by one, each bearing a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The invitation had come in the form of a gilded envelope embossed with the name of a reclusive billionaire they've all known, some better than others. As they step out of their vehicles, gazes drawn by the formidable iron gate, they wonder, how much has he changed since they last saw him, and why the sudden urge to gather them all under one roof? The guard at the gate checks their names against a list, each line meticulously handwritten in swirling ink. With a flourish he admits them, sending a clang through the ancient iron as it locks shut behind them. Beyond lies an expansive courtyard that seems designed to intimidate rather than welcome. Tall hedges loom, arranged in neat geometrical patterns that lead to the massive double doors of the fortress. As they proceed in hesitant unison, the wind picks up, slithering through the cracks in the courtyard walls like a warning. Inside, the main hall stretches to dizzying heights, a sense of claustrophobia clinging to them despite the grandeur. Chandeliers drip crystals that sparkle in candlelight, for there is no fluorescent glare here, only flickering flames reflected in polished marble floors. The billionaire, Adrian Rothwell, appears at the top of a curving staircase. He's dressed in a velvet frock coat, reminiscent of another era, and his grin spreads wide across a face lined with unpredictable smiles. Over the years, these four acquaintances have come to suspect that Adrian delights in exhibiting his wealth in ways both extravagant and perplexing. "Welcome, my dear friends," Adrian calls out, voice echoing among the rafters. He raises a crystal flute in a mock toast. "I see you've arrived safely, which is more than I expected given our precarious mountain roads. But that's how life is, isn't it?" His laughter rings, on the edge of danger. Josephine, who once had a brief fling with Adrian, forces a gracious smile. Her eyes, sparkling with caution, scan for any sign this evening is more than the usual extravaganza. Elias, an architect who frequently collaborated on Adrian's global properties, twiddles his watch chain, captures every detail in thoughtful glances. Malika, a psychiatrist who has grown adept at reading microexpressions, notes the tension in Adrian's shoulders. And Simon, an old college roommate, stands with a half-smile that never quite reaches his eyes. They form a semicircle on the black and white checkerboard floor, dwarfed by the vast interior. Adrian gestures for them to follow him into an expansive drawing room, replete with archaic art and an enormous fireplace. A half-dozen staff stand at attention along the walls, silent yet watchful. Velvet drapes obscure tall windows, giving the impression the outside world no longer exists. Adrian's voice lowers, and though a servant offers champagne, none of the guests feel ready to sip. "This fortress is my new home," Adrian declares. "It's quite a tribute, wouldn't you say? I've honed every corridor, every hidden chamber, to my exact specifications, and soon you'll all see what I mean by that." He takes a slow look around, then gestures for them to be seated. Soft armchairs arranged in a circle seem to invite an intimate gathering. Malika chooses a seat with her back to the wall, impossible to surprise from behind. Aaliyah sits stiffly, as though trying to hold on to decorum. Josephine lowers herself into the plush seat, crossing her legs in an attempt to seem at ease. Simon remains standing until Adrian insists. Once they've settled, their host lifts a cloche from a silver tray, revealing a collection of small envelopes, each sealed with black wax. "I want to thank you all for attending my housewarming," Adrian begins, voice luxurious as if he savors every syllable. "But in your envelopes, you'll find the keys to your rooms. These are not ordinary rooms as you might expect. I've tailored each of them to your preferences, your history, and your secrets." His eyes twinkle. "I invite you to experience them fully during your stay." A hush falls, broken only by the slow crackle of logs in the fireplace. Without question, each guest picks up an envelope. The black wax seal chills them more than the draft from the corridor. Even as they crack open the invitation to find a single brass key, uncertainty flutters in their stomachs, but Adrian only smiles. "I'm sure you'll find your rooms quite remarkable. Dinner will be served in 2 hours. Until then, I trust you'll explore your personal quarters without reservation." He waves them toward the sweeping corridor. The staff leads them to separate wings, The fortress's layout a labyrinth of staircases, hidden alcoves, and twisting hallways. Ornamental mirrors abound, reflecting back fleeting glimpses of their own anxieties. One by one, they scatter in search of the door that matches the etched number on their key. Josephine's assigned suite lies behind a carved oak door. She slips the key into the lock and pushes the door open to reveal a lavish boudoir adorned with tapestries. In the center stands a king-sized bed draped in silks. At first glance it seems perfect, until she notices a single black rose resting on the pillow. Josephine is instantly reminded of the time Adrian sent her a black rose after abruptly ending their liaison. She steps closer, heart pound echoing in her skull, uncertain whether to pick up the bloom or leave it where it lay. She decides to push aside her unease and move to the tall mirror in the corner. The reflection reveals her face, pale, lips pressed thin. On the dresser sits an ornate invitation card with a single line, "Look beneath the bed." Swallowing the lump in her throat, Josephine kneels and peeks into the darkness. There, an old photograph stares back. She recognizes herself in her early 20s, arms linked with Adrian, laughing at some forgotten moment in their short but passionate relationship. Below that, a handwritten note reads, "Do you still believe you made the right choice?" A cold chill runs through her. She wasn't the one who walked away. Adrian had vanished from her life, sending only that black rose in lieu of explanation. Josephine fights to quell the panic stirring within her and storms into her ensuite bathroom to splash water on her face. The water runs red for one alarming second before turning clear. She jolts back, heart pounding. Did she imagine that flash of crimson? Breathing raggedly, she steps out, trying not to lose composure. She can't help but wonder if Adrian has set some twisted stage to unearth old memories best left buried. Simon's room is far simpler, almost austere, reflecting the nights he and Adrian once spent in a cramped college dorm. The single bed is made with cheap white sheets that smell of laundry soap. A desk along one wall holds a stack of notebooks. Each bears a date from years ago, back when Simon and Adrian studied late into the night to build a future they hoped would be equally grand. The recollection ignites a bittersweet ache in Simon's chest. He'd always envied Adrian's confidence, his unstoppable drive that catapulted him to fortune. The invitation card left on the desk reads, "Remember our best-kept secret?" Simon's jaw clenches. Their so-called secret was an unspoken rivalry, each trying to outdo the other academically, forging bizarre wagers that sometimes spilled into dangerous dares. Adrian always insisted it was all in good fun, but one dare had ended in a fiasco that changed their friendship forever. Standing in that stark bedroom, Simon feels the old regret returning. He flips open one of the notebooks. Inside, in that same swirling script, are notes about risk, fortitude, and guilt. The pages reveal a narrative that suggests Adrian took the blame for something that might have sunk Simon's future. Unease stabs at his gut. He had almost forgotten that, or wanted to. Now it seems Adrian is using the fortress's walls to reacquaint them with their past. The last page in the notebook warns in bold letters, "We'll see what you're truly made of, old friend." Malika's assigned chamber is steeped in an ambience of academic research. Bookcases line the walls, filled with volumes on psychology, hypnosis, dream analysis, and repressed memory therapy. It must be a curated set, she realizes, because the titles reflect her interests exactly. In the center of the room stands a large plush armchair, reminiscent of the seat from her clinic. A single overhead lamp beams down, spotlighting the chair as though it's a stage for an interrogation session. An envelope rests on the armrest, labeled Clinical Observations. Inside is a typed transcript of a therapy session she once conducted with Adrian. Memory claws at her. He had come to her office under the guise of exploring his childhood traumas, but it quickly became apparent that he was testing her, gauging her reactions more than revealing himself. She'd never understood his motivation, merely concluded he was playing some elaborate psychological game. As she reads the transcript, Malika sees lines where Adrian described his nightmares, confessions about illusions, and manipulative tendencies aimed at controlling others. She realizes the lines are heavily redacted in some places, black bars obscuring entire paragraphs. One message remains, unredacted at the end. Sometimes you must treat the mind with a shock to break its defenses. At that moment, a breeze stirs the edges of the transcript, though no window is open. Shadows shift on the wall as if someone or something passes by. Alarm prickles the back of her neck. The fortress itself seems to breathe with an unseen animus. Elias enters a suite reminiscent of the architectural wonders he admired, yet everything is slightly off. The proportions are unusual, the walls tilt inward ever so subtly, making the ceiling feel higher and the corners narrower. The effect is faintly dizzying, as if the room is an optical illusion. The furniture follows suit, chairs shaped in bizarre angles, a table that seems to stand on a slope, and windows placed at asymmetrical heights, architectural chaos disguised as modern art. On a drafting table lit by a small lamp sits a blueprint tube, labeled with Ilyas's name. He unrolls it to find the original design for this fortress. His eyes flick across the intricacies, each corridor meticulously drawn. But he notices differences from the final build. Hidden tunnels, secret panic rooms, claustrophobic cells. The hush in the room only deepens as he traces each corridor with a fingertip. The final note on the blueprint, in a flourish of ink, proclaims, "No one knows a structure unless they've walked every passage." He stares at the blueprint, realizing Adrian must have deliberately excluded him from certain conversations at the fortress's planning stage. Could the building harbor compartments designed solely to torment those who dare roam its halls? Elias sets the blueprint aside and approaches one of the skewed windows. Outside, the wind roars past the parapets. He thinks of the labyrinthine corridors below, the cryptic secrets in each suite, and an unsettling dread seeps under his skin. He knows these hallways could easily become a prison. When the dinner hour arrives, the four gather in the grand dining hall. A sumptuous feast stretches along a table that could seat dozens, but only 5 places are set. Adrian sits at the head, beaming at his assembled guests. In silence, the staff pours wine into crystal goblets. Candles flicker, their flames dancing in an improbable wind that seems to penetrate the fortress walls. "How are your rooms?" Adrian asks, eyes flitting around the table. "Everything to your liking, I hope?" His tone drips with dark amusement. No one answers immediately, the tension palpable. Finally, Malika clears her throat. "There's a definite theme in each room," she says, choosing her words carefully. "You've gone through quite some effort to personalize things from our history with you. Why?" Adrian feigns a wounded expression. "Is it so wrong to want my closest friends to feel seen?" "Perhaps I'm just nostalgic," he says, sliding his gaze from Josephine to Elias, from Simon to Malika. "After all, each of you has shaped a piece of my life. It's only fitting I return the favor." Josephine's voice quavers slightly, though she tries to remain confident. "It feels more like you're ripping open old wounds rather than hosting a heartfelt reunion." He steeples his fingers. "Sometimes pain is the most potent teacher, my dear." The flicker in his eye betrays a deeper game. "I apologize if you find my tactics harsh, but I believe in forging stronger bonds through honesty. Wouldn't you agree, Malika?" She glances up from her untouched plate, measuring him. "True honesty doesn't require ambush tactics," she replies quietly. He merely smiles as though satisfied by her retort. Then he stands, taps his wineglass with a silver fork. "My friends, you've barely eaten. Let's settle our nerves," Adrian suggests. "Tomorrow, I've planned a tour of the fortress. There are wonders within these walls that I promise will captivate you. For now, enjoy your meal, rest well. The real festivities begin soon." No one has much appetite, but they pick at the ornate dishes to keep up appearances. The staff drifts in and out, refilling wine and clearing plates. Throughout, Adrian's gaze lingers on each guest in turn, as though he's evaluating how close they are to unraveling. Night wraps the fortress in an oppressive hush. Long hallways stretch into shadow. Josephine can't sleep, haunted by the black rose's significance. She creeps out of her suite, moving past the suits of armor and dark portraits. Candle sconces on the walls flicker. Strangely, her footsteps echo as though someone else follows behind. She pauses, heart pounding, and turns. No one is there. She slips down a corridor that leads to a smaller tower illuminated by moonlight that seeps through arched windows. At the end of the passage stands a heavy door, slightly ajar. Her curiosity piqued, she eases it open and steps into a hidden library. Dust motes dance in the shifting silver beams. Bookshelves tower, lined not just with literature but with what look like diaries. They possess uniform black leather bindings. She lifts one from a shelf. The title glimmers in gold. Volume 44, Observations on Josephine. Flipping through the pages, she scans passages describing her mannerisms, her emotional vulnerabilities, even her last breakup. Shock coils inside her as she sees how extensively Adrian documented her. She slides the book back, adrenaline spiking. As she turns to leave, she notices entire sections labeled for Simon, Elias, Malika, and God knows who else. A chill intensifies the sense of being watched. She darts quietly back into the corridor, determined to warn the others that Adrian may be toying with them in ways they barely understand. Meanwhile, Simon has made a similar decision. Unable to rest, he wanders the labyrinth. A distant scraping noise catches his ear. He follows the sound down an unlit stairwell, leading to what was likely an old dungeon. The air is thick with dampness. His breath echoes. Halfway along a stone corridor, he finds a door cracked open, candlelight seeping through. Inside, Adrian stands before a battered wooden table strewn with documents. Boon prints, photographs, transcripts, even old letters from college. Simon's stomach churns. What is he doing here at this hour? Adrian doesn't startle when Simon makes a noise stepping inside. He merely looks up and gives a slow, indulgent smile. "Couldn't sleep?" the billionaire whispers, as though they're in on a secret. The mind is such a restless thing, especially here. "What is this place?" Simon asks, voice halfway between anger and dread. "My command center." Adrian replies with a mock bow, sweeping a hand across the chaos of papers. "Every great fortress needs a war room. I conduct my research here. Some are from public events, others from private moments. The invasive nature of it chills him. You've been studying us like lab rats." Every line of Adrian's face tightens with satisfaction. A crude way to put it, but yes, I've grown fascinated by how people manage their secrets, their regrets. I used to suspect none of you were true friends, just acquaintances waiting to see me fail, or use me for your own ends. Simon shakes his head, a wave of regret and frustration colliding in his chest. "We all moved on with our lives. We never abandoned you." "Oh, don't lie," Adrian snaps, bitterness darkening his tone. "I see everything now. It's remarkable how easily people can be manipulated when you know precisely which buttons to press." Before Simon can respond, Adrian snuffs the candle. Plunged into darkness, Simon gropes for the door. The last sound he hears is Adrian's laughter echoing behind him in the stale dungeon air. By dawn, tension has mounted to an almost unbearable degree. Elias, Josephine, Malika, and Simon gather in a quiet corner of the courtyard, huddling by a stone arch that overlooks the valley below. The crisp mountain air should be bracing, but a sense of being trapped weighs on them. Together, they exchange details of nights filled with revelations and shadows. Malika suggests they confront Adrian directly, but Elias warns that might escalate the situation. Simon reveals rambling passcodes and trapdoors he glimpsed in that underground chamber, the labyrinth design that means the fortress might hold them captive more thoroughly than any simple lock and key. "Maybe we can just leave," Josephine says, though she casts a worried glance at the gate. The memory of it clanging shut behind them resonates like a final judgment. "Can't force us to stay if we all decide to go now." Malika's brows knit in concern. "Something tells me it's not that simple." A sudden voice interrupts. "Leaving so soon, without a proper farewell?" Adrian steps out from behind a stone column, as though conjured by their conversation. One of his staff lingers behind him, more an imposing sentinel than a servant. The group stiffens, hearts pounding. Adrian clasps his hands together, smiling languidly like a cat that's cornered its prey. "I promised you a tour, didn't I?" he says, glancing at Elias. "You must see all the hidden corridors, the vantage points, the locked chambers. After all, you were always curious how I'd finish the project." Elias swallows but sets his jaw. We appreciate the invitation. As he speaks, he notices the staff behind Adrian pressing a hand to some hidden panel in the wall. A rusted gate descends across the corridor they'd come from, effectively trapping them in the courtyard unless they move deeper into the fortress. Claustrophobia ties knots in Elias's stomach. Adrian stands, arms outstretched, an unspoken command to move forward. Left with no choice, they proceed, footsteps echoing on the cold stone. Adrian leads them along precarious walkways that overlook the rocky chasm. "Mind your step," he says, though his voice brims more with mockery than concern. The fortress seems to shift as they progress. Doors that were once locked now open in invitation, a labyrinth shaping itself around them. Malika tries to steady her nerves, analyzing Adrian's posture. She sees mania dancing in his eyes, a fervent need to orchestrate their fear. Yet there's also a flicker of longing, like part of him craves redemption or acceptance. Could he have set all this in motion just to watch them squirm? Or worse, to confirm they care about him? They arrive at a circular room at the tower's highest point. Slits in the stone walls provide narrow glimpses of the mountain range beyond. In the center is a trap door that Adrian unlocks with a key. He gestures for them to descend a narrow staircase. "Below lies the heart of the fortress," he announces, stepping aside like a ringmaster unveiling the grand finale. One by one they climb down into the chamber. Here the atmosphere is suffocating. Torches sputter against damp walls. The dark shapes of machinery and cables line the perimeter. Elias recognizes them as advanced security systems. Max sensors, monitors, hidden cameras. The entire fortress must be rigged to track their every movement. "Friends," Adrian says, voice resonant in the cavernous space, "I want to conduct a final test." He gestures at 4 chairs. Cuffs dangle from each armrest, reminiscent of interrogation devices. "Sit. Don't be alarmed. This is merely a demonstration of how truths come to light when we're vulnerable." Simon steps forward. "Adrian, enough of this," he says, voice shaking. "If this is some twisted attempt at closure, we'll talk it out. But we're not consenting to be your test subjects." Adrian shows the faintest flicker of uncertainty before he regains composure. "I insist," he says firmly, and at that moment the staff re-emerges from the darkness, urging the 4 friends into the chairs. Fear spikes in their eyes, but they sense no easy escape. Once seated, the staff secures the cuffs with a practiced efficiency. A console set against the wall begins to hum. Adrian stands behind it, pressing a series of buttons. A mechanical arm extends from the ceiling, each limb holding a small sensor that attaches to their temples. Malika's professional instincts scream. This looks like a polygraph system or an advanced neuromonitor. She clenches her teeth, mind racing. Josephine tries to breathe calmly, heart rate rocketing. Elias is tense, scanning for a structural weakness. Simon stares daggers at Adrian, recalling every memory of camaraderie turned sour. With the flick of a switch, mild electric currents pass through the sensors. Pins and needles ripple across their scalps. A screen lights up with swirling lines tracking each person's vital signs. Adrian leans in, voice eerily calm. "Let's play a game of honesty. One by one, I'll ask you a question. If you lie, the system's algorithm will detect the spike and the voltage will intensify." "Adrian," Malika says through gritted teeth, "this is barbaric. You're hurting people you once cared about." He meets her gaze. "Then answer honestly, and no one gets hurt. It's quite simple." His finger hovers over a dial. He starts with Josephine. "Did you really love me, or was it always about my fortune?" She fights back tears, voice trembling as she responds. "I loved who you were before you changed," she says. The lines on the monitor waver but remain within acceptable thresholds. Adrian doesn't raise the voltage. He turns to Simon. "Would you have betrayed me in college, taken all I had, if given the chance for your own success?" Simon sucks in a breath, tries to gather his courage. "No," he says. "I valued our friendship more than any ambition." The line spiked momentarily. A beep sounds, and a painful jolt sears through Simon's temples. He gasps, fighting the urge to cry out. Adrian's lips press in a grim line as though disappointed by a lie. "Your vitals say otherwise," Adrian remarks, twisting the dial. The staff restrains Simon from lurching forward. Malika interjects, "Stop this. You're not interested in truth. You just want to confirm your paranoia. You've always twisted facts to fit your narrative." Adrian's fury crosses his face. He points at Malika. "Then tell me something truthful," he demands. "Do you actually think I'm insane?" She meets his gaze unflinching. "Yes, I do," she states with brutal sincerity. The lines remain steady. Adrian's expression flickers, and he backs away from the console, leaving them in suffocating silence. At that moment, Elias spots an opportunity. With Adrian turned, the console is momentarily unattended. Summoning his strength, Elias yanks at his restraints, the metal biting into his wrists. A seam in the ancient stone where the chair is bolted cracks from the strain. The entire fortress may be formidable, but this particular anchor, perhaps an older installation, begins to give. "Now, Simon!" Elias shouts, and the two men push in tandem. The chair's bolts ripped from the stone floor. Malika and Josephine twist in sync, using the sudden scramble to yank free. The staff rush forward, but Josephine manages to knock one aside. Malika frees her cuffs with a piece of broken metal from Elias's chair. As the console topples and sparks rain, the overhead sensors jerk, and the fortress groans as though outraged. Adrian tries to intervene, but Elias wrests him away from the control. "You built me into this structure," Elias whispers hoarsely, "but you can't control every flaw." With a final heave, the system goes dark, arcs of electricity snapping in the air. The staff stands dumbfounded, no clear orders from their master. Seizing the chance, the four friends dash for the staircase, hearts racing with unbridled terror. Adrian scrambles after them, shouting commands. In the corridor above, the walls reverberate with warning sirens. Heavy gates descend at intervals, threatening to box them in. But Elias, blueprint etched in memory, leads them through a side corridor that bypasses the main gate. They emerge into the courtyard, necks pounding with adrenaline. The path to the fortress's entrance stands open, perhaps due to a power surge disabling the locks. They race across the courtyard, ignoring the staff's shouts, and shove past the iron gate as it tries to seal. Finally, they breach the threshold onto the rocky slope leading back to the main road, lungs gasping for mountain air. The fortress looms behind them, howling with mechanical distress. Only once they're halfway down the winding drive do they dare look back. High atop the parapets, Adrian stands with shoulders slumped. Even at this distance, his frustration is visible. Once they're deep in the safety of the forested slope, they stop. Josephine trembles. Malika gulps for air. Elias winces at the gash on his arm. Simon's heart pounding so fiercely he can feel it in his ears. A numb silence descends as they process their near imprisonment, the extent of Adrian's psychological manipulations. Though they harbor grim relief at having escaped, a question weighs heavily. Will Adrian remain ensconced in that fortress, perfecting his twisted experiments, waiting for another opportunity to test the boundaries of sanity? But for now, battered by fear and relief and leftover guilt, the four of them continue down the mountain road toward the unknown freedom beyond. They carry with them the dark truth that sometimes friendship can be a trap all its own, and that trust, once fractured by cunning deception, may never fully mend.